In the small town of Millfield, people really liked their special priest because they thought he could do miracles when he talked. But one day, instead of having prayer beads around his wrists, the police put handcuffs on him. This made everyone in town very shocked and confused. When the police showed that the priest was lying about something important, it made the people doubt him and wonder if they could trust him anymore. A man named Tobin tried to stop the police from taking the priest away because he thought it was wrong. But the police didn't listen and pushed Tobin and others out of the way. Everyone felt helpless and had to watch as the police took the priest away in a car. The priest seemed ashamed and couldn't even look at his followers. Something strange was happening, but nobody in the church knew what it was. Father Nolan had been in charge of their church for years now, and everybody in the community loved him, not just because he was very hands-on and involved with the churchgoers and the church itself. After the arrest, most of the people left behind at the church sought comfort from each other and went inside to pray for the priest's safe return. Others decided to go home. It was Sunday, but without anybody to lead them in prayer, they felt like it was no use being at the church right now. Jeffrey, who was 19 years old, had been going to the church for a little while. He was really interested in Father Nolan, especially because of the miracles people said he could do. Jeffrey thought there must be a good reason why the police arrested Father Nolan in such a big way. He was studying to be a police officer himself, so he knew that this kind of thing doesn't happen without a good reason. They must have had strong evidence against Father Nolan. Jeffrey knew he probably wouldn't get any answers from the police until they made their case public. If he wanted to know the truth, he had to do some investigating on his own. Jeffrey needed a plan, but first, he wanted to talk to other people who worked at the church to find out more about Father Nolan. Jeffrey talked to the church volunteers, and they were all excited to tell him stories about Father Nolan. They talked about him like he was a really special person, not just someone who believed in God, but someone who could do miracles. But among all the good things they said, one volunteer seemed unsure. She said, "He's done a lot of good," but then she stopped, suggesting that maybe everything wasn't as perfect as it seemed. This made Jeffrey curious. He wanted to know more about the other side of Father Nolan that people weren't talking about. Encouraged by this doubt, Jeffrey decided he wanted to find out the truth about Father Nolan. Jeffrey learned about Nolan's off-limit office from a hesitant church staffer, described as a place shrouded in secrecy. Only Nolan himself had access. This revelation sparked a flurry of questions in Jeffrey's mind. What secrets did this office hold? Jeffrey sought not just entry to a room, but a key to understanding Nolan's true nature. The church owner, while respectful, showed clear reluctance. The idea of granting access to Nolan's private sanctum was fraught with concerns. Yet, sensing Jeffrey's sincere intentions and perhaps moved by the unfolding drama, he agreed to consider the request. Jeffrey finally received the church owner's approval to explore Nolan's office. In his quest for answers, Jeffrey met Maria, a church member whose recovery had been attributed to Nolan's intervention. She spoke of her illness and how Nolan's prayers had seemingly brought her back from the brink. Her story added layers to Nolan's mystique, making Jeffrey ponder the true source of her healing. Was it purely faith, or was there something else at play? Jeffrey wrestled with the contrast between the testimonials and his growing suspicions. The heartfelt stories of recovery clashed with the doubt seeded by the initial hint of Nolan's imperfection. To gain perspective, Jeffrey consulted a skeptical doctor at the local hospital. He hoped to understand the medical viewpoint on the so-called miracles. The doctor, known for his evidence-based approach, offered a counterbalance to the stories of faith healing that Jeffrey had been hearing. Maria detailed her recovery process to Jeffrey, firmly believing in Nolan's pivotal role, despite the medical evidence suggesting her improvement had already begun. Her conviction highlighted the powerful influence of faith and the placebo effect, adding complexity to Jeffrey's investigation. Reflecting on these stories, Jeffrey pondered the delicate balance between belief and medical science. The intersection of faith in Nolan's healing powers and the tangible progress of medical science created a complex puzzle. Jeffrey's conversation with the skeptical doctor added a critical perspective to his investigation. The doctor questioned the validity of Nolan's interventions, suggesting that the timing of the so-called miracles could be explained by medical science rather than divine intervention. Further investigation revealed a nurse closely allied with Nolan, suggesting a potential exchange of confidential patient information. This connection hinted at a deeper level of orchestration behind the scenes. Jeffrey's discovery of this nurse's role added a new dimension to his quest. indicating that Nolan's miracles might not be as spontaneous as they appeared. The link between Nolan and the nurse suggested a calculated orchestration of events that were presented as miracles. This revelation forced Jeffrey to reconsider the nature of these healings. The evidence Jeffrey gathered suggested that Nolan's so-called miracles might have been carefully staged, crossing ethical boundaries. The church owner, upon hearing Jeffrey's findings and concerns, began to share his suspicions. This shared concern led to a collaborative effort between them to uncover the truth. Together, they agreed to a deeper investigation into Nolan's life and practices, uniting in their quest for answers. Jeffrey and the church owner stepped into Nolan's office, a room filled with personal items and papers that had long been off limits. As they sifted through the contents, the first clues began to emerge, pointing to a deeper scheme than either had imagined. Among the clutter of papers and books, they found documents that suggested Nolan had been charging for his blessings. These records hinted at financial exploitation, a stark contrast to the charitable image Nolan had cultivated. Yet the financial evidence laid bare a profound betrayal of the community's faith and desperation. Discovering that Nolan had manipulated his position of trust for profit was a painful revelation. This betrayal cut deep, challenging the revelation of Nolan's actions shattered the community's trust. What had once been a unified congregation was now forced into a collective reassessment of their faith and the figures they had held in high regard. The breach of trust prompted a profound crisis of faith across the community. Though shaken, the community began to heal together. They reflected on the lessons learned from the ordeal about the importance of faith, the value of trust, and the need for healthy skepticism. These lessons became the cornerstone of their path forward, guiding them in rebuilding what had been lost. This unity became their strongest asset, a foundation on which they could rebuild trust and faith in each other and their leaders. Jeffrey and the church now more than ever vowed to move forward with honesty and openness. They committed to leaving behind the shadow of Nolan's deceit, focusing instead on building a community where truth and integrity would light the way. As Jeffrey sifted through the last of Nolan's documents, he uncovered the final piece of the puzzle: definitive proof of Nolan's scheme to monetize faith through orchestrated miracles. This evidence was the key to understanding the full extent of Nolan's manipulation and deceit. When the truth about Nolan's fraudulent activities came to light, the community reacted with shock and anger. The realization that their faith and desperation had been exploited for profit sparked outrage. Reflecting on the ordeal, Jeffrey realized the incredible power of truth. Confronting Nolan's deception had taken courage, but it was the unwavering pursuit of truth that ultimately freed the community from the chains of deceit. This experience underscored the importance of honesty and the strength required to uphold it. The people in the community came together to talk about how much Nolan's betrayal hurt them. They agreed that they needed to start getting better, and this talking was the first step. They knew it would take a long time to feel better, but they were patient. Later on, they thought about how faith isn't just about believing in God. It also helps people heal and stay strong when bad things happen. Even though Nolan hurt them, their faith stayed strong and helped them start feeling better. The church decided to be honest and open from now on, to rebuild trust. They knew it was important for people to believe in the church and trust each other. They'd also realized that it's good to ask questions and not believe everything right away. They wanted to create a community where people feel safe to trust each other and ask questions. Now, they're looking forward to a better future where everyone is honest and true to each other. They believe that if they stick to these values, they can overcome any challenges and have a happy future together.